Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar From Insights to Impact, how Dentsu Creative turns social listening into brand value and creative wins. Let me start with a quick introduction from my side and a glimpse of what's coming up next. I'm Maria, Customer Success Manager here at YouScan, and I'll be your host for this session. And I'm very excited to be joined by two creative, amazing, and inspiring guests, our speakers from Dentsu Creative US team. Charri and Alex will share their secret sauces on how they use YouScan with their use cases and how they turn social data into creative ideas and real impact. I'm sure many agencies who use YouScan in their day-to-day work are watching us today, and not only from US, but by the way, just let us know which country you are joining from. But for the ones who registered for the event and won't be able to join us today, we will send a recorded session shortly after the webinar. And before we dive in, I'd like to take a moment to recognize Dentsu Creative US incredible achievements this year. So we'll start with the 2 Home, 2 Silver, and 4 Bronze Awards for work with Mondelez International and Crayola. Apart from that, they got 1 Webby Award, 1 Webby People's Vote Award, 2 Gold Cannes Lions, 1 Drum Award, Social Campaign of the Year and Best Use of TikTok at the @Age Creativity Award, 1 Gold and 1 Bronze Pencil from the One Club, and Golden Social Media at the Drum Awards for Marketing. Truly amazing, inspiring, and well done for the entire team on these achievements. I'm sure those wins come from the deep insights powered by smart social listening tool and of course combined with the Dentsu team's structured approach and of course creative thinking. By the way, I encourage everyone to follow Dentsu Creative official social media channels in Instagram and LinkedIn. You will find them on the chat shortly. And I highly recommend also subscribing to their weekly newsletter as they uncover what's trending week by week. Well, let's go back to our agenda for today. We're going to explore the challenges our speakers were trying to solve with YouScan, how exactly they used the platform, specific features, workflows, secret sauces, roadmap, you name it. The impact those insights had on the final decision-making and a special aha moments, because I know that they saved some for us today. And by the way, in the end of the session, we will have a dedicated Q&A part. So please leave your question as we go, and then we will come back to answer them at the end of the meeting. So let's start with Charri's story, which looks at how YouScan had transformed Dentsu Creative approach to understanding social conversation and driving strategy across the brands. Charri, thanks for joining us. Let's begin with you. Could you start by telling us about the kind of challenge you were trying to solve with YouScan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm quite fortunate and I get to work with so many teams and so many brands, and I'm able to help out with a lot of different things. So I put together 3 examples of different types of work that YouScan has been paramount in helping us with. So we'll look at how it's been helpful in pitches, and that example is a clothing brand. So this clothing brand wanted to understand how they could stand up against competitors in a very specific space of athletic clothing and more importantly, licensed merch. So that team official merch. And so they really needed to identify ways that their competitors were succeeding as well as falling short. And then what was that white space where they could really overtake them? Then we have landscape analysis. A lot of our clients want not brand focus, but just understanding what the conversation is in their industry. So for this example, we have home builders. And this client is from outside of the US, but starting to build in the US. And so they needed to understand a lot about American home building so that they could expand and grow here. Their main focus was understanding their top competitors in the US and understanding that industry, and to really figure out what was the missing piece between what buyers wanted and needed versus what the top home builders in the United States were actually doing and giving them. And then finally, we have a focus in on client efforts. So our existing clients have a never-ending need to understand social conversation for a number of different things. This specific example is a retail grocer. And they really needed to understand how consumers define value when it comes to grocery shopping. So we were really trying to uncover the emotional and practical drivers behind that perceived value to help us determine how to reach them and how to build a more informed brand strategy and marketing strategy.
Very interesting cases. I'm wondering, Corey, if you have any specific workflow to share with us that your team uses to discover those three cases. Do you have like a step-by-step guide, which feature to use and how to get to the result that you have?
Absolutely. So I'll kind of go through each one and talk about what specific tools inside of YouScan really helped drive that use case. So all of our clients that I have mentioned in here, I can't mention by name. So all of the data that you will see is an example. So that's why as I'm talking about clothing brand, you might see Starbucks. But this is exactly how we used it and the visuals and data visualization that really drove it for us. So for the clothing brand, kind of our top three things that really pushed us over the edge was the image recognition capabilities in the platform. So we really wanted to understand a number of things. What clothing brands were being mentioned when people were talking about sports? Were they wearing a specific sports logo? In a Get Ready With Me, could we figure out who that was tied to? Really needing to understand who was leading that conversation, who was being mentioned the most. How do people use the merch that they're getting? Is it only for game day or is it a part of their fashion, that athletic, athleisure style fashion type of thing? So this really allowed us to not just see word, but to see these images and how people are actually using it with their user-generated content. And it really helped inform and helped us answer questions like which brands and content performed best overall? Like what type was it to Get Ready With Me? Was it the game day content? All those types of things. But then also helped us identify the white space. Out of what was performing best, is it just user-generated content or is there a brand tied to it? And this really helped us in a very easy way visualize it and then pull out that white space. And then that white space is ultimately supported by the hard numbers, the data that we're able to get in YouScan. So for this one, the big help here was just the large selection of social platforms that we have to choose from. We started with another social listening tool that we have, and as we were diving into it, it was really lacking in TikTok and Instagram specifically. For TikTok, we might see one or two mentions or posts, and for Instagram, it was typically just a handful, maybe a dozen, that type of thing. And we knew that specifically with this clothing brand, these two platforms were very important due to the audience and their generation and their use of these social media platforms. So turning to YouScan, we were able to get around 90 times more mentions than our alternative tools. And that really opened it up for us. And it speaks to the visual, like what we have here. It not just gives you that number and the text, but it pulls in, a number of different types of content that they are creating. It's such a high number that it was really allowed us to tap into an audience that otherwise would have completely been missed. And then
That's
also
mind-blowing.
I'm sorry.
That's mind-blowing. I'm talking about the number that you shared before, the
Yeah,
number of the mentions for TikTok and Instagram. That's
yeah.
mind-blowing.
It made a big difference, especially when it comes to younger generations. If you're not able to really listen in on TikTok, and if you're not able to pull the full breadth of Instagram, you're really just getting, Reddit, or you're getting Facebook, and that could be completely off from what your target audience is for the brand. So yeah, there are literally so many different sources. If you want to focus in on just like blogs or forums like Reddit, or if you want to focus on just your key social media platforms, there's just a plethora of different options. And it's like my favorite thing to kind of go through there because you can really easily see this is my topic and what I'm looking at. This is how many mentions and posts that are for each platform. And you can look at that before you even finalize your build to finalize that topic, that search you're doing. So it's amazing. It's probably one of my favorite things. But then we have share of voice. Share of voice was also really important here because we needed to know who was talking and what brands were leading that conversation. And this allowed us to discover stuff that even the client was just not anticipating. I'm going to save that for the big aha reveal, but it really did kind of surprise and delight and led us in a completely different direction than we really thought we would be in. We had one idea in our mind, and then after looking at YouScan and everything it supplied, we realized we were off and we needed to pivot. Uh, so yeah, I'll save the aha for that one. So then we can go to the next example that we have, which is the home builders landscape. So with the home builders, one of the most important things for me on this one was to really understand micro conversations. So we looked at what conversations were happening from the home building companies, and then what conversations were happening from their consumers. And we really needed to understand the micro inside of those larger conversations. And so with YouScan, you have the ability to take your, 20, 30, 40,000 mentions and look for keywords, hashtags, anything that really speaks to that micro conversation. And then you can tag it, and you can color code it, and you can really start to see how the micro conversations are driving the larger one. So with the home builders, this was important because we need to understand, if I'm buying a home, what matters most? What am I taking to the internet to talk about from a pain point of view, or as like a really positive experience? And so we were able to understand that like quality and design was huge. Price was big, but quality and design was larger. People are willing to, pay that extra buck when it comes to your forever home, like where you're going to be living. So having those topics and being able to see positive and negative and what was really building this conversation was huge. And it really informed how we did the rest of our work. And then the rest of our work, there was a lot. Taking these two large conversations, so many mentions and posts and good information, and it is a lot to go through. So having the Copilot AI being able to assist us with that, and it's built in. And one of my favorite things is whether you are advanced prompt writing, whether you are kind of new to AI, it offers that quick pre-built kind of prompt. So there are little questions at the bottom you can select, or like you see on the screen here, we have these cases and you can ask it to generate word of mouth analysis. And it does a good job of filling in the prompt for you and then getting what you need. And then you can have those conversations and you can ask it to dive deeper on certain points. It's just like using Copilot outside of YouScan, but you don't have to export. You don't have to do any of that. It can pull from what you need, whether it's a specific tagged topic that you have, or a specific theme, all of these things, it's in one place, which allows you to keep the analysis in one place. And as any data analyst knows, that is so great because there is nothing worse than having like 12 data files and one is this and one is that. And then you have to keep going back and forth and you have to, put them all together. And then the file's so large, your computer doesn't want to handle it. So having that in there has just been a game changer for us. And then the final one here was a sentiment analysis. So we really wanted to understand when there are spikes in conversation, when things are really kind of popping off over a new announcement, we're able to look not just at sentiment, but we're able to focus it in on specific audiences or specific like tagged topics like we have at the top, like that price. When price conversations are happening, is it driven by a positive experience where someone was happy that they paid that amount or where they felt like that was lacking and they didn't get what they paid for? Looking at it kind of in that timeline and being able to see those, peaks and valleys and then dive deeper into them really, again, helped us just understand this audience and understand coming from another country, how do you start building here and connecting to a completely different audience? So now we can go to the final example that I have, and this is the retail grocer. And I'm just going to say with this one, this was amazing. Um, Everybody that worked on this was from different teams, right? So we had people like myself who were very versed in analytics, and I'm familiar with a lot of tools and I can get really deep into it, but we had a lot of people from strategy and account and creative and everybody coming together. And the beautiful part about YouScan is that whether it's myself hopping in to do like a really deep dive or somebody on strategy who's looking for just that quick takeaway, everybody can use it. We don't really have a problem with people not understanding how to get into the data. It's very user friendly and intuitive. And they have tons of visualizations that I just showed you, as well as tons of little tools inside of the platform. But it's still at its basics, right? And this is what I'm going to show you with this grocer. Just looking at mentions, not going into sentiment, not going into any of this stuff. Just looking at mentions on a very entry level gives you so much. And that's what really helped us with this retailer. And it's just simple mentions, keywords, and of course, the AI tool. So using just mentions, pulling these mentions in to help us understand. We have fans of grocery shopping. That sounds weird, but like I'm even a fan of grocery shopping. I don't look at it as a chore. I get excited of where can I get the best deal? Is it better to buy in bulk here or like have a coupon there? There are people out there like me, they exist and they love grocery shopping. And so we really needed to understand them, so we were able to pull in a massive amount of conversations and to really start diving in using AI and figuring out what are the top themes? What are these grocery heads, as we dubbed them? What are they talking about? What matters to them? What are their pain points? What's really driving them to a brand? And we were able to start seeing things like user-generated content that went viral and sparked massive conversation. For example, branded chocolate milk. This grocery store has a branded chocolate milk that people are obsessed with. And you have all of these grocery heads on the internet doing, they're tasting it, they're comparing it with other ones, they're talking about it. They have like their own little cocktails they'll mix up. They talk about how it's like a fudge pop that's melted and testing the theories. They're really getting involved in just a simple branded chocolate milk. And that's just one example of everything that we were allowed to discover via this tool. And it helped us pull out those top themes, such as the product quality and loyalty, the product variety, how they integrate it into their everyday life, and then comparison. So whether it's product comparisons or comparisons with different brands. And so all of this really helped paint this picture of who this audience is, what they love to see, what they love to talk about, and how we can better understand them.
Well, thank you very much. And I think like everything that you mentioned, Kari, from sentiment to share of voice to visual insight to Insight Copilot to even sources like TikTok and Instagram, right? So you were able to get a lot of mentions comparing with the other tool. I think all of this will help our audience who's watching us also to get the glimpse of how they can also benefit from YouScan for the social listening tool. Just want to remind, I can see that in the chat, and my colleagues are also reminding, and Alex, thank you very much also for the reminder. Just pop the questions, let's say on the go, so that we can go back in the end of the session, and then we will go through all of the questions that you have. We're going to continue, but please feel free to leave those questions for the speakers. Kurt, let's go back to your cases. I have one question for you. So you mentioned already the aha moment, right? I'm wondering what was the biggest impact when you are utilizing YouScan? What was those aha moment that you mentioned?
So, yep, there it is. We got just a microsecond sneak peek before. Our big moments, right? Our ahas. And I love this because it really just shows you, especially for some of these, how we came to this amazing point that we didn't think we could discover that completely disproved a hypothesis and really led us into a strong direction. So I'll kind of just go through each one. For our clothing brand, they came to us with that theory that they had competitors that were really owning that space, the licensed merch, the partnerships with sporting teams and things like that. But after our analysis, we discovered that that was actually not the case. Their competitors were not seen as leaders, and they were rarely mentioned with specific brands or like the NHL, the NFL, anything like that. They were just seen as those who do quick sponsorships with big names and kind of move on. So that assumed connection and that assumed, leaders in the space was completely disproved. And we were able to start to see that our brand was actually leading the conversation. But the real problem was that the conversation was very, very small. So they weren't really owning the fact that they have partnerships with the entire NFL and that they can get you merch from any team that you like and it's available all the time. They weren't really owning that and putting it out there and sharing it with everybody. So the white space was no one was owning it. So we were able to help them build a strategy that helped closely tie our client's brand to being leaders in that space of the licensed fan merch because it was just out there for anybody and we were able to identify it, which is huge. For our home builders landscape, it allowed us to focus in on the home builders conversation, as I mentioned before, as well as the buyers conversation. And we discovered that home builders are very absent in the entire conversation. We were able to pull out that they were only in 33% of the entire conversation. It was very distant. And when they were a part of it, that 33% was focused on high level brand information, right? Like who they hired or they're opening, in a new area, types of things that aren't really sparking interest in home buyers or really giving them what they need. And those home buyers who are looking to build their forever home, they want partnership, right? They want someone who's going to be with them through the whole process and include them. There was this connection that was missing between those who are building the house and those who are going to live there forever and who really want it to be an experience for not just them, but for the generations. And so our big discovery was the white space of having that partnership and building and no longer seeing the buyer as just a number, but being with them through the entire process and cultivating a relationship as they do something huge like build their forever home. And that was huge because in the US, the biggest lacking point, the biggest pain point that we heard was people, again, they just felt like that number and they felt like they were being left out. And there were thousands of mentions of people willing to pay the price for what it takes to build their dream, but not having that partnership. And so it gave our client the insights to be able to say, cool, in the US, this is how we're going to build our brand, and this is what we're going to focus on. And so it's not even just social that this is helping with. Social listening through YouScan helped us on a brand level to really understand at its core, what can this brand implement at a very high level that can then echo down to everything they do. So it's not just social listening for social work, it can be social listening for a much larger purpose. And then for the retail grocer, it's kind of the same story. It ended up being very large for the entire brand. And so the research revealed that value is not solely tied to price. There's this assumption that people go to different grocery stores because they have the best price or they have good deals or they have that loyalty program. And whereas, yes, those are absolutely factors, when it comes to defining value, customers associate it with the freshness, the convenience. They do love those, the rewards that they get, the ethical sourcing. It's more about the complete picture instead of just a price point for them. It's kind of everything all the way through. And so we were able to find out that this grocer did rank favorably in areas like personalized discounts and the community engagement, but they were also lagging behind in certain areas, such as the perception of freshness and premium quality. So it gave us not just an understanding of what our customers valued, but what they can focus on. And if they know that they have freshness and premium quality, but their consumers aren't seeing that, we now know how to target that issue and really show them the value of what we have. And so the social content revealed that this grocer brand loyalty program was a major driver, even when prices were not at their lowest, right? So they have that reward program, and even if they're paying 50 cents more, a dollar more, it's worth it in the long run. And all of this together really helped inform a very strong brand strategy POV and a creative brief for our clients' marketing leadership.
That's amazing. I have one bonus question for you, Kari,
Yes.
and I think that will be a common question from all of the people who's watching us now. So when you mention a retail grocer, I can only imagine how many noise you can collect, with mentions, and this is the common struggle. And I think like we are just looking for your recommendation. Like when you talk about the chocolate milk, for example, or
Yeah.
like people appreciate freshness, cleanliness, or like value, or let's say even quality of the products. How do you make sure you listen exactly to the consumers and not to the like promotion material, or some giveaways or discounts even? Tell us your secret.
Yeah, so I mean, it comes down to a lot of things. Fortunately, with UScan, there are a lot of like little things you can do when you are building out your query. So before you even save it, before you finalize it, and there are a lot of things you can do once you're inside of that built topic. So of course, having a good query is important, and not everyone knows how to write up a good query or what all the little things that they can use to build a strong query is. There is really helpful guidelines and help when it comes to how to build that query and how to use different things like or statements and statements and near statements and everything so that your query is very strong. But in addition to that, there is an extremely large amount of filters. So you can go in and you can indicate you don't want to see reposts. And you can remove that because you don't want a lot of the noise. You just want to get to the root of the conversation. You can also filter in by language and country, and even identify, I guess, identify the unidentified. So if posts can't be identified as the United States, you can still pull them in by bringing in those unidentified, and you get more while also having a little bit more control. And while you're building the topic, you get a preview. And I encourage anybody who has it to really utilize this preview because once you are actually in it, the editing, of course, you've built it, it becomes a little harder. So use it. It is so valuable. You can see an example of the type of mentions, the type of photos, imagery, all this type of stuff that's going to be pulled in. You can play around with your query to make sure that it is correct. You can look through and see, okay, so this topic about couponing is not what we need. So you can add to your query to exclude anything around couponing or around specific brand mentions or even specific like authors and platforms and things like that. So you can really take your time to cultivate what you're going to end up seeing. And then once you're in there, kind of like what I did with the home builders, you can search, use tagging, try to understand, if you have this large conversation, but you're focusing in a little bit, use those tags, use the search option to look for hashtags, keywords, all those types of things. Um, Really get into what you are doing. You can also remove things. So if you're going through and you realize in this micro conversation, someone says, like, I'll use this example. Like they could just die for a Starbucks cookie, right? Like any type of system is going to be like, oh, the word die, like let's pop it into negative. But UScan allows you to have control over, no, this is actually a positive type of thing. So from removing things that are not needed, focusing on what is, there are just endless possibilities for being able to filter down to the platform, the language, reposts, shares, all that type stuff. You can get into the nitty gritty. So I've said a lot, but my biggest thing is when you build your topic, spend time with it before you save it and really get to know all the filters, play around with it. And then if you love what you see, then you can create it and you can get into the work.
Very practical suggestions, to be honest with you, because this is the most common question we usually have after creating the topic. So we don't just leave the topic, we monitor it, we try to filter out all the noise that we have, and we try to focus only on the mentions that truly matters, that is organic, that is user generated, right? So thank you very much for sharing the suggestions and advices from your side. And all three cases are truly fantastic. I'm clapping for your team for such an amazing work that you have done, also from YouScan and also analyzing those mentions and bringing it to the client. And I'm sure your team will have many more successful cases. And well, in general, I think that like a takeaway that I have from this part of the session is that the client, when it comes to us, they often have their own perception of the brand, and usually that comes without any kind of like strong social listening tools, in the background. And the agency help them understand their audience, conversation, share of voice, right? Aspects of the product, like how people usually talk about the brand, like how they actually speak about the brand in social media space, which then leads to more, of course, informative and data-driven decision from client side, and I'm sure much better results in the end of the day for the brand. So thank you for sharing all of those three cases. And now let's switch gears and look at what happens when a campaign faces criticism and how the right insight can turn it into a creative win. Alex, your case take us straight into the real time of social listening. So let's unpack that. The mic is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you everyone who stayed halfway through this webinar. We've got about 20 minutes left and more than 20 slides to go through. Was that a good decision or not? We'll see. So diving right in, I'll be talking about the award-winning TikTok viral moment that nearly didn't happen. It's pretty much a story of almost what wasn't. And because, of course, your time is valuable, the TLDR is, thanks to YouScan, we had ease of access, which was fast, actionable insights. You'll see that was critical, but also a depth of data that using rival tools, as we were lucky enough to have more than one at the time of this viral moment, we saw that, yeah, thanks to YouScan, we had unique qual and quant insights that if we hadn't had it, we pretty much wouldn't have had, which is a very scary thing. So diving right into the work, oh, what? We got to do some lore first. Absolutely Nutter Butter Man. Let's do it. Let's talk about Nutter Butter for those who aren't familiar. We have to enter the Nutterverse. Yes, it has a name. Now, what is the Nutterverse? For those who aren't familiar, whoa, we're just jumping right ahead. It is a world contained within storylines and a growing cast of characters that are always inspired and validated by our fans. And although, as you're seeing this creative, I have to say, I had absolutely nothing to do with the strategy, nothing to do with the creative, people far more talented than me. So, giving credit where credit is due, from 2023 to 2024, we had Ryan, Aubrey, and other creatives working on it. From 2024 to present, we had Zach, Olivia, Aiden, yes, the super fan who inspired so many of these, Sandra, Trent, and Janelle, as well as others. So they deserve all the credit for this amazing work. But the question then is raised, why am I talking? Well, let's see. We had a problem. The problem was success. A good problem to have, but navigating it, especially when over time you really haven't seen that level of success that maybe some other major brands are used to, uh, was where things got a little tricky because we had committed, quite deeply to this nuttier strategic approach for, well over a year, which as a sidebar is a note and almost therapy that when implementing a new strategy, it takes time to have it ultimately pay off. Um, we weren't, though, seeing that dent in the larger public consciousness, even though our engagement rate and just really the brandom within our own comments was growing month over month and quarter over quarter. So, what's the problem? September 13th, 2024. Casey Fitzwater posts, "Nut a butter. Are you good?" Thanks to an engagement threshold alert, we were able to flag this within hours of it, being posted to the Mondelez consumer experience team, CX for short. Had a quick chit chat. We all agreed this was fantastic. We'll passively monitor it. They were going to set it up the ladder. Excellent. Work goes on. Excited. Life, moves on. Knock knock. A few days have passed. A crisis chat is what I'm greeted with in the morning of the 17th. Oh no. Cassie's posts, as I quickly look back, had just been snowballing. Offshoots had been spraying up, and we had a problem. That problem being client leadership, they saw the same stuff as us, but they were considering pulling the content because they had their internal team using rival social listening tools, which of course, it's an open secret, mainly provide Twitter and Reddit data, uh, flagging that this actually was a major brand backlash risks because you wouldn't believe it, on X, it's not all that positive. Uh, and because they had only that data, these negative posts had an outside influence on understanding the overall moment because this TikTok moment was truly and continued to be pushed through TikTok. We really see, and it's almost a truism, different platforms have different audiences. And yeah, we didn't see that cross-pollination nowhere near to the degree. So we are very lucky that we had TikTok data. Ultimately, the thought of having several posts taken down was thanks to CX and other savvy internal, social first champions. They were able to negotiate and ask just for a little time to show that doing so would be a colossal mistake. Enter the solution. With YouScan's depth of data, that terrible decision, if we hadn't had it, may have well occurred. Oof. Why is that? Because we would have missed 99% of views and 92% of all engagements in that critical decision phase. Often said these days, 60% is enough data. Anything more, you're waiting and the moment itself will pass. What about only making a decision on 1% of data or 8% of data? Probably not going to make a good decision. And then how you do so? Super easy. When you're in the YouScan tab on the left-hand side, you have the just general. You go to sources, it's the fourth little section on the top. And then you're able, depending on the KPI of interest, to just toggle and pick what you want. As you can see, TikTok for views was 99%. So when I say it's TikTok driven, that is not hyperbolic. And then engagements, we have 92, but also TikTok data is just one of the many feathers in the YouScan cap. We're getting things like Pinterest, Threads, Blue Sky, etc. This, of course, was tested using because we had more than one rival tools. And that, was just absolutely terrifying because we had only just recently gotten YouScan. So we very well could have been in a situation where we were reaching the same conclusions, even though, our chronically online instincts are telling us this is a good thing. The data would have, if not for YouScan, shown a different picture. And that would have led to some very difficult and uncomfortable decisions where we're ultimately telling the client, please trust us. And they're saying, we have to look out for the bottom line and be maybe a little more conservative. Uh, Additionally, and to the point of an outside interest, if not for this, additional data sets from, the whole swath of, social media online, that only 16% of net negative sentiment would have shaped 100% of our client's decision. Uh, how we went about that is first, of course, when you go into your UScan, it's just the first thing that you see under mentions. You have Insight's Copilot, that's their built-in LLM chat. We were able to very quickly do a vibe check, hey, this is what we think is happening. Is it actually? It samples, different posts. It gives you, of course, a really nice summary. I needed a little bit more rigor in terms of like the very specific numbers. From there, because you have all this data, super easy to export it and manipulate as you need. I'm sure you guys are all doing this, but running then your social listening queries through your LLM of choice to do, thematic sentiment analysis and cluster analysis ultimately got us with a very specific breakdown that then we were able to have qual and quant, put together in a way that is, number first, but not missing maybe some of the details that go with it. And then, of course, the most important thing that would have not happened is Joe Jonas wouldn't have left a comment in our post because it would have been taken down. Only, of course, to just decide a week later to delete it. Can't hide from me, Joe Jonas. And of course, the ability to do that because you're probably thinking like, oh, comments? I thought we were talking about social listening. That's only posts, right? The beautiful thing about UScan is how I understand it and talk about it of a microscope and the telescope. The telescope allows you to see the larger information space of what people are saying on different platforms. But then you're able to, by going into settings, hitting channels, and then adding your own, but also competitors or any brand of interest, their TikTok accounts. And then from there, you're getting not only all their posts as well as the KPIs with it. You get saves, which you can't get through the third-party, TikTok native app. So props to YouScan. But you also can ingest their comments. And some competitors, if you have, various CMS tools, allow you to get comments. With YouScan, you're able to get the engagements with those comments so that you could properly weigh, one expression of positivity versus one negative one. Once you have that set up, you go into audiences. It's the first section by default. Same thing as before. You pick your KPI of choice. You're able to, of course, to then search anything that you want. In this case, I looked up, celebrities, and then I saw Joe Jonas's comment. Of course, because I have a Mac Command Shift 4 to make sure I capture it. As looking back, he had deleted it, but the internet doesn't forget. And as I said, luckily we did have YouScan. So all these possibilities that might have happened didn't, which led to a very nice resolution. The ease of pulling this data meant that we were able to do so quickly. We're back to that crisis check on the 17th. Within the first hour, I was able to throw together, a really simple slide with all the important information so that we could then run that up to, leadership on the brand side. They were able to take a breather and realize, hey, this is something actually to celebrate rather than fear, because we're not saying there isn't negativity. There was, it's always about validating rather than negating when client whispering. But also, these numbers are not something to scoff at. Not only were we seeing a moving average that already put it, even just 2 days after the initial spike, into this historic moment, the fact that it hadn't crest let us know that it was going to become a bigger moment. Boy, did we not realize how big it would be. So crisis averted. The worst option of, our post ultimately being taken down. And, if things are being taken down, then now a strategic review. We don't even want to go there. It would have been bad. Luckily, it was good. Because by buying time over the weekend, that's when things really, really exploded. So we love it when nothing happens. And because we're all in marketing, we know that it's not just about selling initially to your clients or even to your consumers, but it's also about negating buyer's remorse by validating their initial choice. A month later, we were able to, of course, do a review, and we saw some eye-watering, phenomenal numbers. Nutter as a brand spends nothing on marketing since the 1970s, except for organic social. This viral moment got us twice the all-time Super Bowl viewership numbers. As you can see, even though TikTok actually was just, under a fifth of all mentions, it drove almost all the views and engagements. So if your social listening tool isn't doing that, I'll leave it at that. Ultimately, these numbers were included in our award pitches that Maria, thank you for glazing us, allowed us to win a lot of very prestigious things and recognize, of course, the team's amazing strategy, creative work, and continued perseverance on something that many people would have feared away from. But in doing this larger review, we were able to not only once again validate that there was negativity. We're not saying you didn't see what you saw, but we really want to emphasize what you may not have noticed, which was not only were people, just absolutely praising the Nunderbar account, loving this, not even understanding what they were looking at, but in a almost 18th century Gothic literature sense, what was repulsing you was also attracting you and causing interest. We're also able to quantify how much of that overall conversation is actually being seeded from other people. As you can see, 11.5%, which gives us the ability to talk through where success came from, who was really the main drivers, but also of course, always practicing a comment to content pipeline. What were the things that people wanted to hear about so that we can tease that and add a little intrigue down the line. Now, though we're marketers, in the social media game, at the end of the day, marketing is about selling. So the ability to, not just say, hey, here's some posts, here's some, qual, but specifically say 11.4% of all conversation since the September 13th initial viral, moment talked explicitly about wanting to buy, about purchasing, about considering to buy. Because once you have your initial topic, the ability, you could almost just Google within your own topics specific things. So you use Insight QuotePilot to get an initial understanding of like, oh, these are topics to look into. You do your nice little, Google search as query. I want all mentions of buying, or considering or wanting or desire. Pro tip, I love using an LLM to throw in what I initially want and then, ask for synonyms so that it builds it out for me. Because, everyone talks differently. And having, your handy little AI support that helps you more holistically capture that sentiment. So I did just that. And then as you can see, we found some really amazing things. And I'll end with the most amazing thing. Don't be jealous, guys. Um, this is a social listening professional's dream comment. It has high engagement. It explicitly talks about how your campaign work before, they had one perception. Afterwards, they were directly influenced. And not just directly influenced, not, oh, I'm going to buy. Past tense, he's already bought it. If that's not a KPI, I don't know what is. And, I am allowed to say that this moment did absolutely drive sales in a way that, yeah, made people realize, yeah, organic social is a thing. So that's that. Thank you for this wild ride. The end.
I just want to say that, guys, your cases were so different, and we were, like uncovering three cases from Curry and another butter case from Alex. But like the way you guys highlighted, first of all, the TikTok data, because the numbers you shared, Alex, and you shared Curry, are just mind blowing. Like 99% of the views and 92% of the engagement that you would have missed unless you had this data from TikTok. And as well, you highlighted that you were using Insight Copilot, to uncover those insights, to understand what is like the general vibe, and then dig deeper in that direction. So that's amazing. I do have one question before we go forward, Alex. So you mentioned that the initial alert that you got was by YouScan. Do you remember by any chance what was that alert set up for? Was it for the sentiment negative or for a specific number of the subscribers? If you don't remember, that's fine. That's just like my curiosity, because we have a lot of clients who are working with campaigns, and this is something that give us the control of the negative sentiment, especially when we are running the campaign for the client.
Yeah, it was an engagement threshold. So, having looked at what conversation looks like and knowing above, a certain amount of engagement, I was able to just put in a hard number. Also not mentioned, but having the Teams plugin, these alerts just send automatically to a private Teams channel that I have. That way, not every alert is, perfectly, noise to signal ratio, but the ability just to be like, oh yeah, do a quick check, flag it to the team. It really allows me not to break my workflow. And, now obviously things are different for Nutter Butter, but initially we had a very clear understanding of, what was of interest after a certain number, and what was, just the usual chatter.
Cool. Thank you very much.
So we also wanted to give you just key takeaways, because we've been talking for what, like 40 minutes now. So we wanted to quickly give you just our top three. Like, this is why we find so much value in YouScan. First one, ease of access. Like I mentioned, from somebody who's not even an analyst to someone like Alex and myself, that it is our everyday life. This tool is easy to use. It gives you access to so much that can easily be missed. And even if you aren't super experienced, the tool helps guide you so that you can still get to those insights. The next one, which kind of piggybacks off of it, is the depth of data. So again, those incredible numbers that we were able to pull, the number of mentions, the number of platforms, the way that you can kind of slice it up and filter it. It's incredible. And there's so much that can be missed. And thankfully, we don't have to miss it now. And then the cutting edge tech. So having the AI built in, and a bunch of like being able to pull TikTok comments, right? Like, that's something new. They're always innovating. They're always coming out with new things, new ways for us to be able to use the tool most efficiently for all of our clients. Alex and I work kind of in the same area, but in two very different parts of the agency. So for him, it's this incredible nutter butter, type of work. And for me, it's almost every day, it's a new pitch, a new client request, something. They're very different. And so it really does speak to how their constant technology growth and advancement helps us in not just, like I said before, not just social listening for social, but social listening for all of our clients' needs across the board.
Great, thank you very much, guys. So you shared your takeaways. I will just maybe sum up for my takeaways from your cases. Just want to say that a good social listening tool proves the data-driven decision based on analysis and, of course, creativity. You literally have creative name in your agency name, so that proves that the creative approach also should be present in every work, right? Either it's pitch or it's campaign or it's just the monitoring for the brand. Second, I think the real-time listening is power, as Alex says, regarding the alert, regarding the real-time TikTok post that we can track. And finally, social listening isn't just a data, it's about hearing what people feel and why it matters. I remember Charri's case with the home builders. So I think it's very, very important to also really understand your audience and really understand how to drive the strategy further. So let's check if we have any questions from the audience. Yeah, we have a couple. So from your experience, which type of social content, text, images, or videos tend to deliver the most valuable insights for creative work? Alex, you want to take it?
I would love to, because we definitely didn't see that question beforehand and have slides prepared to answer it. So what's so great is that, it's not just looking at text, you're also looking at visuals, at audio, the ability to layer and, say like, hey, I want to know, to Kari's example on her second slide, uh, not just people talking about a brand, I want to know exactly like how many times our sponsored logo shows up in an event in the background as a way to then create a KPI around the visibility of said sponsorship through social. So obviously text is the highest, quote unquote, so to speak. But of course, the ability to, in the case of Nutter Butter, be able to hear people talk and say like, hey, you have to go check out Nutter Butter. It just better captures the human experience because we don't talk in the way that brands would like us to say. I'm not like, I am Alex Dorr, this is my age, location, I think good about this, bad about that. It's fluid, constantly changing, and having these different data streams allows us really to slice and dice that data in a way that gives actionable insights.
Yeah, by the way, go check the Nutter Butter official social media channels. I really, really recommend it after this presentation. So let's go for another question from Ryan. How have you found the toolscapes for geofencing social listening? This is actually one of the questions that we usually have. He says, I have a use case that requires insight based on hyperlocal regions and curious to hear your experience. Who
Yeah,
wants
so
to?
I can speak to this. It's actually something that I've been working on. I think with YouScan specifically, the number of filters and the ability to get a really good query going has helped me a lot. I think the important thing to remember is with social, as I'm sure we all know, it's almost impossible to get actual locations from everybody because it really depends on a number of things. Are they self-identifying in their profile? Is it, reported somewhere? And so there's a large amount that we can't get. So having a query that's built to really identify different unique ways that people will identify where they're from, can even be emojis and things like that. Like you have to get creative and really kind of like think outside the box of how they're going to talk about it. Being able to pick specific regions as well, and the filtering options have been really good for me. Currently, we have a client who they have activations all across the country, and they really need to be able to tie what we're doing experientially to the conversations people are having and the impact it's having on the brand. So we are able to go into YouScan and say that for this brand in the United States, using the filters in this region, and then also being very specific with our query, we can get a good understanding. And we know that there's always going to be things that are missed because of that reporting on location. But the more you kind of play with the filters and get familiar with that query, as well as once you're in using keywords, sometimes people drop keyword indicators. Be very thorough, kind of check everywhere and really think outside of the box. Yeah, hopefully that answered the question.
I think I can add from my side. So, whenever we are talking about the geolocation, the good hint here is also check the query for author bio operator. So, a lot of the time, they usually put in the small description of the bio, the flag of the country where they're based in, right? Or where they usually, let's say, create the content from. So, this is something that we can also control with the help of query. Let's go for one more question. Do you have any recommendation on how to track sentiment more accurately? Alex, you want to take this one?
I think it's always about, speed versus depth. Of course, use your best judgment on when the deliverable turnaround is. If you have a little time, I really would highly recommend exporting your comments, and then, as I said, running it through your LLM of choice, because I'm sure all of our agencies have, Gen AI policies, but the beautiful thing about social listening is that it's all publicly available information, thus not client sensitive, and ability to use, not secure LLMs. So yeah, the ability to not only have access to all of that, but then also, because you're able to have, more of a back and forth, you're able to ask deeper questions than simply, positive, negative, neutral. Now, of course, if you can't do that, the ability to do so through Insight's Copilot makes it super easy because it's all within, all within the existing window that you're doing so. Additionally, it allows you then to multitask, have Insight Copilot look into it, have, some more doom scrolling and ingestion on the left. So it really, I'd say it depends, but you know, large language models, given they're trained on over 1 trillion words, are pretty good at understanding what those words mean, despite linguistic slipperiness.
I had something to add there as well, because I actually love this. So in the platform itself, so let's say that you can't export it or any of that. Just spending time with the data, right? So going in there under the mentions tab and searching up different keywords and understanding. And to the example I used before, if you see someone talking about like, oh my gosh, this cookie's to die for, look for how many times people just use things like that. And then you can manually change that sentiment, like I said. And it's super easy. You can bulk change. So if you find that there are 250 comments that are talking about like, oh, I would kill for this, or, this Slade or whatever it may be, you can bulk change it in a split second so that you can get more accurate. Sometimes there are millions of mentions and that's difficult. But if you have an understanding, you can really clean up in platform to get some better results.
Really love your recommendations. Yeah, I think it's also one of the most common questions because as many mentions we can get, we always will want to look for the sentiment, right? And as you mentioned, Charri, the phrase die for, maybe it's not considered in the positive mentions. So sometimes it might be marked as a negative, but if you will look for this phrase in all of the mentions, you can just like bulk correct the sentiment to the positive one. All right, I think we don't have more questions. So thank you very much to both of you for sharing your experiences, for sharing your overall use of the tools, your wins as well, and big clap for all of the team behind you as well. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. I hope this story gave you a glimpse of how social listening can uncover what people truly care about and how having a powerful and inside social listening tool can drive a smarter strategy, stronger creative approach, and even protect great ideas under pressure. If you would like to learn more about YouScan and how it helps leading agencies and brands turn insight into impact, you can visit our website, youscan.io. And thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.